Stop signing, Celeste screamed before slapping Hannah Reed. Marco Bellini caught her wrist before she could strike again. What the hell is happening? Celeste pointed at Hannah. She twisted my words to turn Sophia against me. Sophia signed sharply. Hannah voiced it. She didn't twist anything. Marco looked between them. Then what did you say? Hannah met one of the city's most feared men without flinching. Your fiancée said that after the wedding, she'd make you choose between your marriage and your sister, and told me not to translate it. Marco went completely still. Celeste tried to pull free. That is not what I meant. Hannah looked at her. You told me exactly what you meant. Marco's eyes moved to Sophia. His younger sister was watching him carefully, not frightened, not confused, waiting. Marco released Celeste's wrist. Start from the beginning. Celeste's face tightened. Hannah deliberately made it sound cruel. I translated it exactly. You knew how Sophia would react. Yes, then you wanted this. Hannah's expression hardened. I wanted Sophia to know what was said about her. Marco looked at Hannah. You could have warned me first. Hannah stared back. Why should a conversation about Sophia happen without Sophia? That answer irritated him immediately. You could have prevented this. No, you're an interpreter. Yes. Then interpret. I did. Celeste stepped forward. She has been provoking you for months. Sophia signed. Hannah watched her hands, then voiced the message. She says I'm not the one being provoked. Marco looked at his sister. What are you saying? Sophia signed again. Hannah hesitated. Marco noticed. Translate it. She says this isn't the first time someone has talked differently around her because they thought she couldn't understand. The words landed harder than Celeste's accusation. Marco looked at Sophia. How long? Sophia signed. Hannah translated. She says long enough. Marco turned towards Celeste. Did you say what Hannah says you said? Celeste's eyes filled with frustration. I said I was tired of everything revolving around Sophia. Marco remained silent. Celeste continued. I said there had to be boundaries after the wedding. Those are not the words you were just accused of saying. I never told Hannah to insult Sophia. Hannah shook her head. You told me not to interpret it. Celeste looked at Marco. She made a choice to humiliate me. No, Hannah said. I did my job. Marco turned toward her. And your job requires blowing up my engagement. Your engagement was already in trouble. Celeste stared at her. Marco's expression darkened. You don't get to decide that. No, Hannah said calmly. Neither do I, but your sister does get to know what was said about her. Sophia stepped between them. She signed directly toward Marco. Hannah translated. She says she does not need you to choose between her and Celeste. Marco's jaw tightened. She just needs you to stop making other people speak for her. Silence. Sophia continued signing. Hannah's voice became quieter. She says she loves you. Marco's expression changed. She knows you have always tried to protect her. His eyes dropped briefly. She says she is grateful. Another pause. Then Hannah translated the final sentence. She says she is tired. Marco looked at his sister. Tired of what? Sophia signed. Hannah answered. Of everyone deciding what she should know, what she should hear, and what she should be protected from. Marco looked back at Hannah. You enjoyed saying that? No. Then why do you sound so certain? Because Sophia has been telling you this for years. You don't know what you're talking about. Hannah's voice remained steady. I know you have paid excellent interpreters for her. Marco frowned. I know you have made sure she is never left without access. Yes, I know you have solved every practical problem before she has to ask. Marco's expression hardened. What is your point? Hannah met his eyes. You pay people to understand your sister for you. The room went silent. Marco stared at her. For perhaps the first time in years, somebody had described his greatest source of pride as though it were a failure. And the worst part, that he could not immediately prove her wrong. Marco found Sophia alone after Celeste left. She was sitting quietly, watching him. He stopped several feet away. Are you angry with me? Sophia signed. Hannah was not there. Marco understood only part of it. Slower. Sophia repeated the signs. He caught enough to understand the first sentence. You're angry? Sophia nodded. With me? Another nod. Marco swallowed. Because I believed Celeste. Sophia shook her head. That confused him. Then why? She signed again. Marco recognized only 2 words. Always. People. He frowned. I don't understand. Sophia stopped signing. Her expression changed. That was worse than anger. It was disappointment. She pulled out and typed. You know basic signs. You don't know me. Marco stared at the sentence. I know you. Sophia typed again. You know what I need? Another message appeared. You don't always know what I think. Marco felt something tighten in his chest. I've made sure you had the best interpreters. Sophia looked at him, then typed. Exactly. He did not understand. She typed another message. You make sure someone understands me. Pause. You don't make sure you understand me. Marco looked away. He had no defense. That did not sound like an excuse. Sophia stood. She signed slowly. Marco tried to follow. He managed 3 words. You love me? Sophia nodded, then signed again. He lost her completely. She took out her phone. Loving me is not the same as speaking for me. Marco looked at her. I never meant to speak for you. Sophia typed immediately. You do it all the time. Before he could answer, Hannah appeared at the doorway. I came to check whether Sophia needed a ride. Marco turned toward her. Stay. Hannah looked at Sophia. Sophia shook her head. Hannah waited. Sophia signed. Hannah voiced it. She says she wants to talk to you alone. Marco looked at his sister. You understand what she's saying? Yes. Without an interpreter. Hannah nodded. Sometimes I'm here because Sophia wants access. Marco stared at her. And sometimes, she wants you to learn how to be her brother. That sentence followed him for days. He returned to the office and sat through 3 meetings without hearing half of what was said. That night he opened his phone and searched. ASL adult classes. He stared at the list, then registered for one, not because Hannah was teaching it. He did not know that yet. He registered because Sophia's question had exposed a gap he could no longer pretend was efficiency. If Hannah quit tomorrow, how much of me could you understand without asking someone else? The answer had embarrassed him. Almost nothing. 3 days later, Marco walked into an adult ASL classroom. Hannah looked up. Her expression was priceless. You? Marco glanced around. Apparently, you do realize I can grade you. I'm aware. Do your employees know you voluntarily entered a room where I can grade you? No. Good. She looked at the attendance sheet. You're late. I was working. You're still late. Marco sat. The teacher began. Within 20 minutes, he discovered something humiliating. His face was apparently wrong. Hannah corrected him again. Marco repeated the sign. Better? He frowned. What was wrong? Your face. My face is fine. Your face looks like you're sentencing someone. The class laughed. Marco looked around. Nobody looked afraid. One older woman raised her hand. "Honey, if you look that angry while asking somebody whether they want coffee, they're going to think the coffee is poisoned." The class erupted. Marco stared at Hannah. She was laughing. "You're enjoying this professionally," he sighed. The class continued. Marco discovered that ASL required him to use his face differently. Eyebrows, mouth, expression, timing, everything he had spent decades controlling. The tighter his expression became, the less natural his signing looked. Hannah stopped him again. "You're trying to control every movement. That's how I work. This isn't work. What is it? Communication." He looked at her. She held his gaze. "You can't negotiate your way through every sentence." That landed. Sophia found out about the class within 24 hours. She arrived after Marco's third lesson and stood in front of him. She signed quickly. Marco stared. "Sophia." She signed again. He looked toward Hannah. Hannah smiled. "What did she say?" Sophia immediately signed slower. Marco tried to follow. He caught one phrase. "Powerful." He looked proud. Then Sophia finished. Marco turned to Hannah. "She insulted me." Hannah laughed. "What did she say?" Sophia signed again. Hannah translated. She said, "Powerful mafia boss defeated by adverbs." Marco stared at his sister. Sophia was laughing. For the first time in months, he laughed too. Not because the situation was easy, because he was finally inside it. He was failing at something in front of Sophia, and she was not embarrassed by him. She was enjoying watching him learn. Later, Hannah found Marco practicing alone. "You're serious about this?" "Yes. You don't have to become fluent overnight." "I know." "Good." He looked at her. "I want to understand her." Hannah nodded. "That's different." Marco hesitated. "From what? From wanting everyone else to understand her for you?" He accepted that. Weeks passed. Marco learned badly at first. Then slowly, he began understanding basic conversations without an interpreter. He still missed details. Sophia corrected him constantly. He complained. She enjoyed it. And somewhere between the homework, the ridiculous facial expressions, and the humiliation of being a beginner, Marco began noticing Hannah differently. Not only as the woman who had embarrassed him, not only as Sophia's interpreter. He noticed that Hannah loved terrible crime novels, that she became absurdly competitive during trivia games, that she hated anyone folding the corner of a book, that she talked quietly to herself when trying to remember where she had left something, that she could interpret an angry argument without becoming angry herself. One evening, Marco watched Hannah interpret a difficult conversation between Sophia and an older deaf community member. The woman was upset. Sophia was frustrated. Hannah remained calm. She did not soften anyone's words. She did not choose sides. She simply made sure each person could hear the other. Afterward, Marco asked her, "How do you know when to help?" Hannah looked at him. "I help people communicate." She paused. "I don't decide what they should do with what they hear." Marco thought about his entire life. He had built his world around hearing information, then deciding what everyone should do with it. For the first time, he understood that Hannah's restraint was not passivity. It was discipline, and respect was beginning to replace distrust. Marco became better at ASL. Not good, better. So Sophia took great pleasure in reminding him of the distinction. One evening, she signed something rapidly across the table. Marco frowned. "Slow down," she repeated it. He caught a few words. "You're talking about..." Sophia waited. Marco looked toward Hannah. Hannah smiled. "No help. I know you're cheating. I'm asking for clarification." That is cheating with better vocabulary. Sophia signed again. Marco stared. Then he understood enough to answer. You're asking whether I practiced? Sophia nodded. Marco smiled. Yes. She signed something else. Marco narrowed his eyes. What did you say? Sophia looked at Hannah. Hannah refused to help. Marco finally caught the last phrase. You said, I'm improving. Sophia laughed. Marco looked suspicious. That was sarcasm. Sophia nodded enthusiastically. Hannah laughed too. You're learning. Marco shook his head. Apparently, fluency has disadvantages. The classroom became easier after that. Marco stopped treating every correction like criticism. He began asking questions. He made mistakes. He occasionally used the wrong sign and accidentally changed an ordinary sentence into something embarrassing. The class laughed. He laughed too. For a man who had built his reputation around never appearing uncertain, it was strangely liberating. Hannah noticed the difference. You're less angry. I'm still angry. At least now your face says what you mean. He gave her an exaggerated expression. Hannah laughed. That was terrible. Purposefully. That is worse. The attraction between them grew quietly. No dramatic moment. No sudden obsession. Marco began looking for reasons to keep conversations going after class. Hannah noticed. She did not encourage him. She did not discourage him either. Then Marco stopped finding reasons. One evening, class ended. Hannah gathered her notes. Marco waited. She looked at him. What? Nothing. That usually means something. He took a breath. I'm no longer your student. Hannah smiled. Your certificate is still emotionally fragile. Be kind to it. Marco laughed, then became serious. Would you let me take you to dinner now? She looked at him carefully. You waited until the class ended. Yes. Why? Because I didn't want you wondering whether saying no would make teaching me uncomfortable. Hannah was silent. That answer surprised her more than the invitation. You thought about that? Yes, more than you think. Marco nodded. Hannah smiled. Yes. The date was her choice. Marco did not change the reservation, did not ask anyone to rearrange the room, did not send someone ahead spec to the restaurant. Hannah watched him carefully. What? You haven't tried to improve anything? I'm trying growth. She laughed. You're making it sound painful. It is. Dinner was ordinary. That was precisely why Marco enjoyed it. No one adjusted their behavior around him. No one interrupted. No one asked whether he needed privacy. Nobody knew his name. Hannah noticed him relaxing. This is strange for you. What is? Nobody here is afraid of you. Marco looked around. I hadn't noticed. She smiled. You're lying. Possibly. They talked about everything except business, books, bad movies, food, her students, his terrible childhood taste in music. At one point, Hannah laughed so hard she had to put her glass down. Marco simply watched her. What? Nothing. You're staring? You're staring. I know. She raised an eyebrow. You're getting bold. I'm learning. That night, Hannah told him about a long-term relationship she had ended years earlier. He wasn't cruel, she said. Marco listened. He just talked for me too often. What does that mean? He answered questions directed at me. Marco went still. He explained my reactions before I had them. She looked down. Whenever something became uncomfortable, he negotiated for me. And you stayed for a while. Why did you leave? Because being represented all the time can eventually feel a lot like disappearing. Marco looked at her. He understood that sentence immediately, not as a theory, as a warning. Hannah smiled faintly. I'm not telling you this because I think you're him. Good. You're different. That sounded suspiciously like a compliment. It wasn't. He laughed, then asked, "What do you need from me?" Hannah thought about it. "Ask, I do, when you mean it." Marco nodded. "I'll remember." Their relationship remained private for several weeks. Then Daniel Cho walked into the classroom. Hannah smiled immediately. "Daniel," he signed quickly. Marco could follow only pieces. He caught Hannah laughing. Daniel laughed. Marco disliked how easily they communicated. After class, he asked Sophia, "How long has Hannah known him?" Sophia smiled. "You should ask Hannah." "I am asking you." Sophia shook her head. Marco frowned. "That's not helpful." Sophia signed. He concentrated. She says he stopped. "I don't know," Sophia laughed. Eventually, he asked Hannah directly. "Daniel?" She smiled. "Yes. You two seem close." "We are." "How long?" "Years?" Marco hesitated. "No reason." Hannah's smile widened. "You're jealous?" "I'm not." Daniel walked past. He looked at Marco, then at Hannah, then grinned. "He absolutely is." Marco stared at him. "I didn't ask you." Daniel laughed. "That seems to be a recurring problem." Hannah nearly choked. Marco looked betrayed. "You're enjoying this immensely." He shook his head. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. The jealousy was real, but so was the trust. Marco did not demand explanations, did not investigate Daniel, did not decide who Hannah should spend time with. He simply accepted that a woman he cared about had relationships that existed completely outside him. That should have been easy. For Marco Bellini, it was another form of growth. Then Victor Hale arrived with a problem. "We have an accessibility issue at the new training center." Hannah listened. Sophia had been raising concerns about how deaf employees were being handled during meetings and professional development. Victor sounded impatient. "Most of this is logistical." Hannah looked at him. "Funny?" Victor frowned. "What's funny?" "People usually call something a distraction when they're not the ones being excluded." Victor's expression hardened. Marco noticed. Later, Sophia presented her recommendations directly to Marco. They were blunt. Some senior executives looked embarrassed. Victor leaned toward Marco. "Your sister has obviously been discussing this with Hannah." Marco looked at him. "What makes you say that?" "The language." Marco glanced towards Sophia. She was watching him, waiting. Victor continued. "You know how these things work. Interpreters can influence how people frame complaints." Marco's expression changed. The old instinct appeared. Find the source. Identify the influence. Solve the problem. He looked toward Hannah. For one dangerous second, he wondered whether Victor was right, and Hannah noticed. Victor's suggestion should have died in the broom. Instead, it stayed. Marco looked at Sophia, then at Hannah. "How much of this came from you?" The question was quiet. Hannah froze. Sophia's expression changed immediately. Marco saw it. He knew, even before she answered, that he had made a mistake. "I'm asking because some of the language sounds familiar." Hannah stared at him. "Familiar to whom?" "To you." So Marco's jaw tightened. "Sophia has been challenging everything lately." "No." Hannah's answer was immediate. "Sophia has been explaining things you are finally willing to hear." Victor stepped closer. "You see, that's exactly what I mean." Hannah turned toward him. "You mean the idea that a deaf woman might have her own opinions?" Victor stiffened. "That isn't what I said. It's what you implied." Marco raised a hand. "Enough." Everyone looked at him. He continued, I want to know whether Hannah influenced Sophia's presentation. Sophia signed sharply. Marco looked at her. Hannah waited. Marco tried to follow the signs. He caught only fragments. He turned toward Hannah. What did she say? Hannah's eyes hardened. You're asking me to interpret? Yes. Sophia shook her head. She moved closer to Marco. Slowly, carefully, she signed again. Marco concentrated. He understood one word. No. Then another. Hannah. Then he lost the rest. I'm not understanding everything. Sophia repeated herself slower. Marco caught enough. You want to speak for yourself? Sophia nodded. Victor looked uncomfortable. Marco turned toward Hannah. Can you stay? Hannah nodded. Marco faced Sophia. Tell me. Sophia signed. Marco watched. He understood perhaps half. Enough to know she was angry. Enough to know she was serious. Not enough to know every detail. But for once, he did not immediately ask Hannah to fill the silence. Sophia kept signing. Marco struggled. Then she stopped. She tapped on her phone. You finally listened. Then you didn't like what you heard. Marco stared at the screen. Victor shifted. This is exactly why. Marco turned toward him. No. Victor stopped. Marco looked back at Sophia. You created these recommendations? Sophia nodded. Not Hannah? Another nod. Marco asked slowly in ASL. You worked on them yourself. His signing was clumsy. Sophia watched him carefully, then smiled. She signed back. Marco understood. Yes. He nodded. Okay. Victor looked stunned. Marco, not now. The meeting ended. Later, Marco found Hannah alone. You were right. She looked up. About what? I should have asked Sophia. Yes, I should not have asked whether you put the ideas into her head. No. He hesitated. But I still need to understand why the recommendations are so aggressive. Hannah nodded. Then ask Sophia. I did, and I understood enough. That's progress. He almost smiled. Then Sophia's report came back from legal. Several recommendations would require significant changes. Some executives resisted. Victor resisted most of all. This will create unnecessary costs. Sophia signed from the other side of the room. Hannah interpreted. She says exclusion already has costs. Victor looked annoyed. Marco answered before he could. Then calculate them. The room went silent. Victor stared. Marco, you said accessibility was an operational distraction. Victor paused. I said some requests were impractical. Then tell me which ones and why. The meeting continued. Not every recommendation was accepted. Some were modified. Others required further review. But nobody was allowed to dismiss the concerns simply because Sophia had raised them. Marco had learned something important. Listening did not mean agreeing with everything. It meant allowing the other person to finish. That evening, Sophia found him alone. She signed slowly. Marco watched her hands. He understood. You're proud of me. Sophia nodded, then signed again. Marco frowned. What? Sophia repeated it. He caught the phrase. You're proud of yourself. She smiled. Marco finally understood. He laughed. Powerful mafia boss, defeated by adverbs. Sophia laughed so hard she nearly dropped her phone. Marco looked toward Hannah. She was smiling. You told her that? I didn't need to. Sophia signed. Marco watched carefully. He understood. You still have much to learn. He nodded. I know. That night, Marco sat alone in his office, thinking about Hannah, the woman who had translated Celeste's cruelty. Exactly. The instructor who refused to give him special treatment. The interpreter who never decided what Sophia should hear. The woman who could stand in a room full of powerful people and remain completely herself? He had trusted her when she agreed with him, then suspected her the moment Sophia disagreed. The irony was unbearable. Celeste had asked Hannah not to translate an uncomfortable truth. Marco had almost done something similar in a different form. He had heard Sophia say something he disliked and immediately looked for someone else to blame. The next morning, Victor approached him. "You're allowing this to go too far." Marco looked up. "What?" "Sophia's recommendations. She made them, or Hannah did." Marco's expression hardened. Hannah didn't give Sophia a voice. Victor paused. Marco continued. "Sophia always had one." He leaned back. "We were simply too comfortable making her borrow someone else's." Victor said nothing. Then Marco added, "If you disagree with Sophia, argue with Sophia." Victor nodded reluctantly. "And if you disagree with Hannah, then I argue with Hannah." That afternoon, Hannah found Marco waiting outside her classroom. He was not carrying flowers, no gift, no business proposal, no invitation. She stopped. "What do you want?" "Nothing." Hannah raised an eyebrow. "That's new." Marco smiled faintly. "I wanted to tell you something." She waited. "I was wrong." Her expression softened. "You'll need to be more specific about Sophia." "Go on." "I believed you because you agreed with me." Hannah said nothing. "And when Sophia disagreed with me, I distrusted you." He looked directly at her. "That wasn't trust." "No. I blamed the person standing closest to the truth instead of listening to the person telling it." Hannah's voice was quiet. "Yes." Marco took a breath. "I'm sorry." She nodded. "Thank you. I don't expect you to fix this. I wasn't planning to." He smiled. "I know." They stood there in silence. Then Marco signed slowly. "I was wrong." Hannah watched him. The signs were imperfect, but clear. "You practiced?" "Yes. Your face is still terrible." He almost laughed. "I was serious." "I know." She smiled. And for the first time since the engagement collapsed, Hannah believed Marco was no longer trying to win the argument. He was learning to live without needing one. 3 weeks passed. Marco kept learning. He no longer asked Hannah to review his homework. He no longer stayed after class, searching for reasons to talk. He simply showed up, practiced, and let Sophia correct him. Sometimes she signed too quickly on purpose. Sometimes he caught her. Every time he did, she looked almost offended that he was improving. One evening after class, Hannah watched Marco signing with another student. His hands were still slower than everyone else's. His expression still occasionally looked like a man interrogating the language. But he was communicating. Not perfectly. Honestly, that mattered more. After class, Sophia approached him. She signed. Marco concentrated. "You want to talk?" She nodded. He waited. She signed carefully. Marco understood most of it. Then she said something he missed. He frowned. Again, Sophia repeated it. He watched closely. This time he understood. "You're proud of me." Sophia smiled. She shook her head, then signed again. Marco stared. Hannah, standing several feet away, did not help. Finally, Marco understood. "You're proud of yourself." Sophia nodded. Marco smiled. "That's better." Sophia's expression softened. Then she signed. "About time." Marco laughed. Hannah watched them. For years, she had interpreted between people who technically shared a language and still failed to understand one another. Now, Marco and Sophia were doing something much harder. They were learning how to disagree without fear. That was the real victory. The accessibility program eventually launched. Some of Sophia's recommendations became policy. Some became training requirements. Some were revised after discussions with deaf employees. Marco did not attach Hannah's name to the project. He did not ask her to lead it. He did not turn her into the public face of his improvement. He simply supported the changes and let the people affected by them remain involved. Victor Hale eventually resigned after repeatedly treating accessibility as a logistical inconvenience rather than participation. Marco accepted his resignation without using Hannah as justification. The work continued, the family adjusted, and Sophia remained exactly who she had always been. Independent, blunt, funny, impossible to manage. One evening, Marco found Hannah after her class. She looked at him suspiciously. Business crisis? No. Victor caused another problem? No. Sophia wants something? No. Then why are you here? Marco smiled. I wanted to see you. Hannah became quiet. He continued. I came without a problem. That is unusual. I know. He stepped closer. No flowers, no gift, no proposal. Nothing he could use to make the moment easier. I was wrong about you. Hannah raised an eyebrow again. Yes, that's becoming a pattern. Marco smiled. I thought loving Sophia meant preventing every possible problem. Hannah waited. I thought protecting her meant making sure somebody was always there to understand her. His expression softened. I was wrong. Hannah said nothing. I thought I trusted you because you agreed with me. She looked down. And when Sophia said things I didn't want to hear, I thought you must have put the ideas there. Marco paused. That was not trust. No. He switched to ASL. His signing was slower than Hannah's, more deliberate, but clear. I was wrong. Hannah watched him. He continued. You told the truth when it was easier to lie. Her expression softened. Marco added, You never spoke for Sophia. Pause. You helped us hear her. Hannah looked at his hands, then at his face. And what do you want now? Marco answered in ASL. A chance. Hannah smiled faintly. A chance for what? He took a breath, then signed. Dinner. Her eyebrows rose. You're asking entirely in ASL. He nodded. Brave, he signed again. Would you have dinner with me? Hannah watched him for several seconds, then signed back. What if I say no? Marco understood. He answered without hesitation. I go home. She waited. He added. Unhappy? Hannah laughed. Good answer. She signed. Yes. Marco smiled. At that exact moment, Sophia appeared. She looked between them, then signed rapidly toward Hannah. Hannah laughed. Marco narrowed his eyes. What? Hannah translated. She says you're significantly less exhausting now. Marco immediately signed back. I understood that. Sophia froze, then laughed. Hannah covered her mouth. Marco looked offended. Apparently, fluency has disadvantages. Sophia signed something else. Marco stared. Hannah smiled. What? He pointed toward his sister. She's doing it again. She's your sister. Exactly. Hannah laughed. Marco looked at her. Not as an interpreter. Not as an interpreter. Not as the woman who had challenged Celeste. Not as a teacher. Not as the person who had helped him repair his relationship with Sophia. Just Hannah. And he understood the final difference. For years, he had believed understanding meant knowing what someone needed. Now he knew better. Understanding meant allowing another person to tell you what they wanted, and accepting that their answer might be different from yours. Hannah had never given Sophia a voice. Sophia had always had one. Hannah had simply refused to let powerful people decide that truth should become softer before anyone heard it. Marco had spent his life controlling rooms. Now he had learned the harder skill, listening inside one. Hannah smiled. "You're thinking again?" Marco looked at her. "I'm trying to dangerous." He smiled. "Dinner." She nodded. "Dinner." And this time, there was no audience, no engagement celebration, no rival, no interpreter between them. Just two people choosing to communicate for themselves.